Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here. Today I want to talk about the 30 Super Carry. So a couple of months ago I did a video explaining why I think a lot of new calibers don't really make it in terms of popularity. And just the other day I did a video on the 360 Buckhammer and what I think the future holds in store for that particular round, just based off of what I saw at SHOT Show this year, and both with the 360 Buckhammer and other guns that could potentially be chambered in 360 Buckhammer. But what about the 30 Super Carry? Because the 30 Super Carry was the other caliber I talked about in that other video. And this is a caliber that a lot of people think is just already a dead round, and a lot of people think that it was a solution for a problem that never existed. You know, it's a gun and a caliber that nobody asked for. And honestly, when people say that it's something nobody ever asked for, I'm sure that there are some people that have asked for it. So my question is, can the 30 Super Carry be saved? And is it worth saving? So let's kind of break it down. So in my last video about this topic, I said that new calibers a lot of times don't really last because there's a lack of support in the industry. So there's not a whole lot of gun manufacturers making guns and not a whole lot of ammo manufacturers making ammo. And not only necessarily the number of ammo manufacturers, but the number of types of ammunition. So, I mean, you can have one manufacturer make like 10 different types of ammunition for this caliber, or they could make one type. So that's kind of what it all boils down to. Now, as far as I know, there are basically 4 different guns that you can get that are chambered in 30 Super Carry. There's the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield Plus, the Smith & Wesson M&P EZ Shield, whatever that one's called. I don't really follow Smith & Wesson very well. Then there's a Nighthawk Custom 1911, and I mean, you can get that a 1911 in basically any configuration you want, but it's still just a custom 1911. So that's the 3 that I knew about in that last video. And there's actually a 4th one that I guess came out just before or just after I made that video, and that is the Hi-Point carbine. And just like with the 1911, I don't really understand the purpose of having a 10-round carbine by Hi-Point chambered in the 30 Super Carry, because honestly, the whole purpose of the 30 Super Carry is so that you can get more ammunition in the gun compared to 9mm and 380 ACP. But when Hi-Point only offers guns with 10-round capacities, that really defeats the purpose of the gun and the round. So basically, for anybody who doesn't really know what a 30 Super Carry is, I have 3 rounds here to try and illustrate it. So on the left here, this is a 30 carbine. So this is a 308 caliber carbine round. And it's basically the length of like a 357 Magnum. But this is what, was chambered in the the M1 carbine, and they've made like revolvers and stuff in this caliber as well. But this is basically a 30 caliber round. And then in the middle here, that's the 380 ACP and the 9mm. So the 380 and the 9mm are basically the same diameter. And the 30 Super Carry is basically going to be a 30 caliber. Actually, it's more like a 31 caliber. It's like .311 or something. So just slightly wider than this 30 carbine, but to the length of the 9mm. So it's going to fit in your 9mm and your 380 ACP size guns. Potentially anything from a compact, subcompact, all the way up to a full size. So the whole purpose of The round is that you can get more rounds in the same size gun as a 9mm and a 380 ACP. But when you have something like that Hi-Point carbine, it doesn't really make sense because Hi-Point, again, only makes guns in a 10-round capacity for whatever reason, when really if they made the same size gun as the 9mm, it should theoretically be able to hold like 12 or 13 rounds compared to the 9mm. So I don't really understand the whole purpose of that gun, and I don't really understand the purpose of the 1911. And it's not because I don't think that the 30 Super Carry would be a good round in a 1911, but it's a custom 1911, and you're talking like at least $3,000 for that custom 1911 that's going to be in a caliber that's really hard to get. So, but you can get like, I think it's like 12 rounds of ammunition in that pistol, in the magazine anyway. So, 10 rounds of 30 Super Carry versus, say, 7 or 8 rounds of 45 ACP, or 9-ish rounds of 9mm. So, 12 rounds, that's pretty good for a 1911. But again, it's a very expensive 1911, and just not a whole lot of people are actually going to get that gun. So really, realistically, most people, if they're going to get a 30 Super Carry, they're only going to get the 2 Smith & Wesson offerings. And really, in my opinion, the only one that makes sense is the M&P Shield Plus, because that holds like, what, 14 or 15 rounds? I don't remember off the top of my head. But compared to the EZ, which is a single stack, and I forget how many rounds that one can have in it. But it's not as many as the other one. But as far as new guns and new ammo manufacturers, I didn't really follow SHOT Show that closely, but I never saw anything come out new for the 30 Super Carry. And I guess the 30 Super Carry has been around for like 2 years now, and maybe they have like 7 or 8 ammo offerings from maybe 3 or 4 manufacturers. So that's not a ton. And there's, like I said, 4 firearm options. But could it be saved? Because honestly, it doesn't seem like it's that popular of a round. It was fairly popular right at the beginning, but can it be saved? So I think the answer is yes, it could be saved, because a lot of rounds, they come and go and sometimes come back again. We've seen this many times throughout the years. So probably the biggest example of this is the 10mm. So when the 10mm first came out, it was pretty popular because it was supposed to be like the round to have, and it very quickly kind of faded away in favor of the 40 Smith & Wesson, because the 40 Smith & Wesson was what the FBI adopted. So, you still had like the Glock 20 and 29, and you had like the Colt Delta Elite, but I think even that gun might have come and gone at some point. But you had a couple of guns out there chambered in 10mm, but for the most part, guns were either chambered in 9mm, 40, or 45. There are very few 10mm, but in the last 10 years, the 10mm has really gained a lot of popularity, and the 40 Smith & Wesson has declined in popularity. So nowadays, it's the 10mm that's more popular than the 40, even though they're both still out there. But that's just an example. Another couple examples would be the 45 Colt and the 45 70. Those rounds were pretty much dying off until like Cowboy Action came around, and like Marlin came back out with their 1895 guns and like guide guns and stuff like that. And I don't know when that was, maybe in the 80s or the 90s, somewhere around there. But I think at one point in time, the 45 Colt and the 45-70, they just weren't very popular. And they were mostly in like old guns. So those 2 rounds have come and gone. And another example is the 450 Bushmaster. When it first came out, it was, I don't really know how popular it was, but I feel like it kind of declined in popularity. It's basically an AR-15 caliber, but it's a big bore caliber. And I don't think it really was super popular until fairly recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, whenever these states came out with the straight wall restrictions when it comes to deer hunting, and then all of a sudden you have all these bolt actions and single shot rifles chambered for the 450 Bushmaster. So the 450 Bushmaster is definitely more popular today than it was when it first came out. So anyway, those are 4 examples of rounds that have come and gone and come back, even though I guess they weren't ever like fully gone. But could the 30 Super Carry come back? And the answer is yes, it potentially could, but you have to have a good gun manufacturer to come out with a gun or 2 or 3 to chamber that round. So I just have a few examples of guns or types of guns that could potentially fill that void. So one example would be the Walther PPK, because this is a very iconic gun. It's the James Bond gun. It's the gun Hitler killed himself with. It's just a very popular gun, and it's very iconic. But it's only a 380, and it only holds 6 rounds. So the 380, so the whole purpose of the 30 Super Carry is the fact that you get more capacity with the 30 Super Carry than you do with a 9mm or a 380. And it's more powerful than a 380. Not quite as powerful as a 9, but more powerful than a 380. So theoretically, if you had a gun like this and you wanted to carry it, but you didn't necessarily want a 380 or a 32 ACP. These were also made in 32 ACP, and they've even made some in 22. They might have even made them in 25. But anyway, all 4 of those calibers, they're not super ideal for self-defense. I mean, they're good for backups, and I really see the Walther PPK as more of a backup pistol, or like a little bit more of a deep concealment where you can't carry like a full-size gun like that Glock up there. But anyway, all those calibers, they're not super powerful. But if it was chambered in 30 Super Carry, you might be able to fit 8 rounds in that magazine. Maybe 9 if you have the PPK-S, which is a little bit longer. So let's just say 8 rounds of 30 Super Carry versus 6 rounds of 380 ACP. I definitely think that's a win. So you could have, potentially, you could have a classic looking gun like this, an iconic looking gun, but in a much more capable caliber, because I've seen videos of the ballistics, ballistic testing between a 30 Super Carry and a 380, and the 30 Super Carry just blows the 380 out of the water. So that would be a good example of something that could potentially be a good option for a 30 Super Carry. And not only just this gun, but like the Beretta Cheetah series, and I'm sure there's a few others out there. They're just really good looking guns like that are usually chambered in 380 ACP, but would be you would benefit more if it was in 30 Super Carry. Just another example of a gun would be the Kahr single stack, and I think Kahr actually came out with a double stack pistol at SHOT Show, so that's kind of interesting. A lot of dog hair around here. This is a Kahr K9. I mean, this, you could, if you made this into a 30 Super Carry, you get a couple extra rounds in there. So that would be a good alternative. You just get a slightly less capable round, but you have like 2 more rounds. So, but those are both single stack, where I think the 30 Super Carry would really shine, and I don't have an example of this gun, but if Glock picked up the 30 Super Carry. So this is a Glock 20. It's a full, or not a 20, but a 22. Full-sized 40 caliber Glock. That's the only Glock I really have other than my P80, which is also full size. But Glock came out with the 43X and the 48, which I think are the same grip frame. And they're like a staggered magazine. So the full-size guns, those are like a true double-stack magazine. But the 43X and the 48, I believe, are staggered magazines. And so they're probably a similar size to the car here, maybe a little bit bigger in the grip anyway. So about this, similar size to this, but they're a staggered magazine and they hold 10 rounds. But there was a company called like Shield Arms or something, some company that made a true double stack magazine for that gun, well, both of those guns, and it was a 15 round 9mm magazine. Now, the more rounds you have in a magazine in 9mm, the more you're going to pick up with a 30 Super Carry. So if you have 10 rounds in a double stack, you may have 3 extra rounds of 30 Super Carry. If you have 15 rounds in a double stack 9mm, you might have 19 rounds in a 30 Super Carry. So if they took the 43X or the 48 and made it into a 30 Super Carry, you might have enough room in that magazine, in the factory magazine anyway, to have a true double stack. I don't know for sure because I've never tried it. I don't have one to try out. And even if you couldn't make it into a true double stack, they could probably fudge the specifications of it just a little bit in their manufacturing process and make it into a true double stack magazine if they made it into a 30 Super Carry. And a gun that size, like I said, if you can get a true double stack magazine to hold 15 rounds of 9mm, you could probably get that same magazine to hold at least 18, if not 19 rounds of 30 Super Carry. So take a gun similar size as this and have 19-ish rounds of 30 Super Carry versus the same gun or a very similar size gun like the Glock 43X, which only holds 10 rounds in a standard capacity factory magazine. So you take the two guns, you have one is 10 rounds, one is 18 or 19 rounds. That is a huge win for the 30 Super Carry. Now, would Glock ever do this? I don't know. I've read some forums and things that people have said, but honestly, who knows what's really true on the internet? I mean, I've read people's comments that claim that they work for different gun manufacturers and that they, shared their data with other gun manufacturers. And one of them, he said that he talked to Glock and Glock was like really quick to respond. And so that could mean that Glock is planning a 30 Super Carry pistol at some point. But I don't know. Who knows what's true, like I said. But in my opinion, that would be something that would really work for the 30 Super Carry and would really help the round out. Now, as far as ammo goes, I mean, you got different offerings in Federal, Remington, Hornady, Speer Gold Dot, and that might be about it. I think there was like a CCI offering, but they're also owned by Federal. So, 4, maybe 5 manufacturers making like 7 or 8 different options. It's not huge right now, but it does have potential to grow. And like I said, I didn't see anything new with the round at SHOT Show, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing in the works. So we'll just kind of have to see. So can the 30 Super Carry be saved? I say yes, it can be, but will it be? That is the question. So that's all I have for this video. Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog, I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.